Okay, I have an IBM Model M keyboard from 1988, it's the greatest keyboard of all time, so I'm just going to make the best game of all time with it. But Elliott, what game? Tetris doesn't need an introduction, it's probably the most ported game with a goal anyone can understand. You just need object permanence. But in case you don't have that, basic concept of Tetris is simple. Get a colourful shape into a hole and make a line. So let me just make a new 2D Unity project. Wait a sec, it turns out that 90% of you aren't subscribed to the channel, so please consider subscribing if you enjoy this video. Anyway, back to it. I'm going to make a square sprite that I can use to make all of the tetrominoes. The first one I'm going to make is the pink T tetromino, and to make the squares more distinct I'm just going to put the scale to 0.9 and you can see there's gaps now. We've got to make the piece move now, so we're going to add a script to it so that if we tap left or right then it will move left or right, but it's not dropping, so the next step is vertical movement. It looks fine, but in the original game you can make the piece fall faster by pressing down the down key, and to make this effect we just make the fall time faster whenever we press the down arrow. At the moment it can go anywhere and we don't do any validation for the movement, so we're just going to check if the squares of the tetromino are outside the grid, and if it is then it can't do that move, so we're not going to let it. Rotation in Tetris is actually kind of hard to understand, so I used this diagram to help me do this section. Basically each piece will rotate in 90-degree steps around a certain rotation point, and to code this we'll rotate around a defined rotation point for each piece that we make, and then validate the move, and that's it. Then we're just going to make them all prefabs as well so we can spawn them in later. This object will just spawn in new tetrominoes and later on handle scoring and statistics in the UI. I mean, it works and spawns them, but the actual tetrominoes don't have any collisions and there's no line clears or anything like that. So we've got to keep track of all the tetrominoes using a 2D grid array. Basically, whenever a tetromino stops moving, we'll add it to the grid. We also need to check for lines and delete them, and then move the lines above down.
Boring! Shut up, nerd!
Some people might stop at this point, say it's done, but there's no score, there's nothing interesting, so why don't we just add some of the sweet stuff from NES Tetris? I'm talking a score tracker, a line tracker, high scores, tetromino count tracker, preview your next tetromino, levels, and just cool UI. Who wouldn't want that? Keeping track of the score and lines was pretty easy, I just added these lines in, and so was the game over screen. We just disabled the spawner and check till they press R to restart. If so, then restart the entire scene, done. I also spent a lot of time trying to make the game look like NES Tetris, and the only thing I couldn't find was the background of it, so everything else is roughly the same apart from the background, and I'm too lazy to make a custom one, so tough luck. The statistics of each tetromino was easy too. I used a dictionary to store the amount of each tetromino that had been placed, and then linked that up with the text boxes, and then it would display how many had been placed of each type, which is pretty neat. I used the built-in player pref system to score the high score just like I did in Super. If you haven't seen that video, then please consider giving it a watch, it should be on screen right now. And I think everything is done. It's a retro game made with a very clacky keyboard, and I'm pretty pleased with how similar it is to the retro Tetris. So here's some gameplay, remember to subscribe, cheers.